Up until that moment, things were great.
Eric Drew had it all: a modeling career, a home in Europe, a new girlfriend. He was in the prime of his life, and then one fateful day in 2002, everything changed.
Just like that, my life was over.
Eric was diagnosed with stage 4 acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL. Doctors said his bone marrow was 100% cancerous.
He said, look, if you don't check into Stanford Medical Center tomorrow morning, you will not live the next 4 or 5 days. And what do you do with the last few hours of your life?
But Eric was one of the lucky ones. After several weeks in the hospital, he went into remission. But no amount of radiation or chemo could cure him. Eric needed a transplant.
After several months of raising money, it became very clear that I wasn't going to find a match.
With more than 10 million people on the bone marrow registry, still not one match. Doctors said there was nothing else they could do.
I felt victimized. How can they not have a cure for me? How can they just send me home without going over any options with me or anything else? Wasn't good enough for me.
So Eric began to research, and he came across an experimental transplant using stem cells from umbilical cord blood.
Cord blood banking, I think, over the last couple of years has really come into being mainly because of the many indications that it has in terms of the different diseases it has a capability of treating.
Dr. Suzanne Welsh at UW educates her patients about the option of cord blood banking, which is done right after delivery.
It is blood that is otherwise really discarded at the time of birth. There's no pain involved to the baby or the mother. It's a very simple system for us to do as providers.
Dr. Welsh also banked the cells of both her sons because of a family history of leukemias.
It became a little bit of a security blanket for me and my family. That, and I have 15 nieces and nephews that potentially could also use the cord blood.
Current research shows as many as 40 diseases are now treatable with cord blood. Most of them are leukemias, anemias, and immune and metabolic disorders.
The National Institutes of Health have over 200 clinical studies currently being funded for using umbilical cord blood to treat diseases, so the future is very bright for the cord blood utilization to help patients.
There are two banking options: public and private. The public system is free, but you relinquish all rights to your donation. The private system costs anywhere from $1,600 to $2,000 initially, with an annual storage fee of about $100. But the donation is yours to use as you wish. That's one reason Dr. Norman Faust, bioethics program director at UW, criticizes private banking.
Poor people can't afford this. People of even moderate means to spend several $1,000s on something that you'll almost certainly never use is just something that most families can't consider.
Dr. Faust also criticizes what he calls misleading marketing statements made by the commercial companies.
The suggestions are made, well, even if your son or daughter doesn't get one of these diseases while they're still a child, 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, they may have a disease that it can be useful for. And that's even more of a sketchy proposition.
But ViaCord, the only private FDA-approved collection and processing system in the U.S., disagrees.
All the data that we give to parents as to the likelihood of use are from reputable studies that have been published and peer-reviewed.
Still, UW does not mandate that doctors educate patients about cord blood banking.
It's an experiment, but it's a shot, right? It's better than going home and dying.
That's why Eric Drew now travels the country to raise awareness of his miracle of medicine.
It was the hardest decision of my life.
On July 23, 2004, Eric was the first adult with ALL in the U.S. to undergo a cord blood stem cell transplant. Because he had to purchase cords from a public bank and an unknown donor, his body rejected them.
The chances of surviving a cord blood stem cell transplant are 3 times greater when using a related source of cells as opposed to an unrelated source. For me, it was horrible. 2 days after the transplant, I hit a fever of 106.8. My skin boiled. Because of that reaction, they had to give me massive doses of cortisonal steroids, prednisone, and that has caused all the bones in my legs to die.
Eric is in the process of having all of his joints replaced one by one, but he says it was all worth it because he is alive.
I sit before you now with the blood of a baby girl.
Because he was given a second chance at life, he developed the Drew Foundation to help others who are dying and running out of time, just as he was a few years ago.
Now it's very clear to me that there was a reason why I was one of the few that did survive, and it's a blessing for me to be able to go out and help thousands of other patients in this country and around the world get to the treatments they need.